show on BlazeRadioOnline.com. I'm Dominic Stern, joined by Cole Bradley, Ryan Blank, here to talk about the latest in baseball, which is the World Series. We came on last time. We had our World Series matchup as the Braves did knock off Los Angeles Dodgers. And this World Series, it's 3-1 right now.
Yep.
The Braves are leading the Astros, and they're also leading Game 5 as we speak right now. We'll be giving updates throughout the show, but
Adam Duvall. That's all I have to say.
yes,
Adam Duvall hits a grand slam off Framber Valdez in the first inning. Let's go, Atlanta. Finish the job. Don't smile. Job's not finished yet.
It's not. They jumped out to a 4-0 lead in the first inning, but Houston responded with 2 in the second inning, so that they've got Framber Valdez's back. Had a rough World Series, and that was one of my big things that I hammered home. I'm like, hey, Framber Valdez, a postseason pitcher who showed us in 2020 that he thrives on the big stage. Been kind of up and down so far this postseason. Had some rough starts at the beginning, but had a really good start against the Red Sox in the ALCS. But it's been really bad in the World Series, and it's not something that you want to see from one of your very few starting pitchers.
100% agree. Yeah, and no, he's kind of an interesting case because when, like you said, I mean, obviously his postseason career, as frankly, short as it's been, he's been to the postseason twice now. He pitched really well last year. He's had a couple good starts this postseason, and got the game 1 start, which was huge for him, and it was that great story and everything, and all the hype coming in after the 8 innings he twirled against Boston last. And that's the thing about this game, but just about the World Series and the big stage that sort of humbles you. I mean, he's still very relatively young in his career. And, being able to pitch and to perform at the highest level in front of the home crowd with everything on the line, pretty much, I think it just kind of got to him. And it got to him really, really fast. Obviously, you let up that leadoff home run to Jorge Soler. So everything, from the beginning, it just kind of spiraled in on him. So, yeah, it's a testament to how Atlanta has played this series and this entire postseason in general. We'll get into that more, obviously. But, yeah, a little shocked that he hasn't been really on his A game this World Series.
Yeah, and he was going up against Charlie Morton in it comes out 2 batters later or 3 batters later that he actually was hurt after he struck out Jose Altuve on a very good curveball, and he's been ruled out of the postseason, which they haven't necessarily needed him yet because his start wouldn't have come until today. But the Atlanta Braves, the bullpen has stepped up in his absence because he could have been able to start Game 4. We know Charlie Morton, he's a grinder, he's an old school pitcher, he's a competitor, but man, it was tough to watch as he walked off the mound, knowing that he'd been one of their best pitchers. He'd been one of the reasons that they had been so good so far in this postseason, and that was definitely tough to see. What did you think when you saw Charlie Morton walking off, Ryan?
Can we talk about the adrenaline rush that he was on?
Yeah.
After breaking his, is it fibula, correct? I'm not good with the human anatomy.
Yeah, we are.
He broke
sports.
his leg. That's, simple as that.
Yeah. So he stays in the game, gets 3 more outs, 2 of them being strikeouts, then gets Jose Altuve to ground out, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Do not ever underestimate the adrenaline rush from people on the grandest stage. And you know what? I give all the credit in the world to Charlie Morton. And after that loss, I was talking with a few people about how the potential effects that it would have on this series after seeing him go down. But this Braves team, despite all the punches that have been thrown at them, they do a great job of just battling back. Mm-hmm. And seeing Morton walk off that field was crushing because he had, I believe, one of the higher odds for the Braves to win World Series MVP, and he was going to be a key guy in this series.
Did you have money on Morton winning MVP, Ryan?
Sounds
No, I
like
did
it.
not. No, I did not, actually.
Yeah, I know.
Do you know who I did put money on though? As a joke, Jorge Soler.
Ah, hey,
Hip hip, Jorge, baby.
Yeah.
it's not a bad pick so far now.
It's kind of weird that you're saying as a joke you put money on Jorge Soler.
I did not expect him to hit 2 nukes like that. So
Well, he did it because he's a Royal. So,
No,
I mean,
that's what
I
I'm saying. I
Yeah.
wouldn't imagine it being a joke if one of his favorite players is
God,
at stake.
I miss this version of Jorge Soler on the Royals. I really do.
Well, you should be glad that he came out for like 2 weeks
Yeah.
because if that doesn't happen, I'm not sure the Braves
No.
give the Royals anything because
Yeah.
He barely got anything because he was still hitting sub 150.
right, but it doesn't matter because something is better than nothing, as we all know.
Exactly.
And those are the trades that have put the Braves in position to where they just got to win one of the next 3 games
Yep.
in order to be World Series champions. But game 1, Jorge Soler hit the first leadoff home run in World Series history. There had been 117 World Series games.
There's also another tidbit that I have of history.
Okay.
In 2015, Alcides Escobar became the first player ever to hit a homer in the bottom of the first inning.
To lead off the bottom.
To lead off the bottom of the first inning with a homer, and yet it was an inside the park home run.
Yeah, I remember that one well. That was kind of a funny one.
I remember I
Yeah.
was watching it on my phone and I was screaming at my brother's football game, "Go, go, go!" And when he did it, I got a lot of people just staring at
that's
me.
nuts.
Did your arm hurt or
You know-
were you doing like the base coach like
Yes.
go go go?
Oh yeah. Oh, full send it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Drop
And I
the
was
phone
running.
on
I
the
was
ground
running
and
up and
start-
down the bleachers too.
You have to.
Yeah, I was running up and down the
There
bleachers.
you go.
You know, I'm not gonna lie. I'm a bigger guy. I was a little bit out of breath. At the time.
Well, Cole and I, unfortunately, none of us have
We haven't
had the opportunity to watch our
experienced
team
that
play in the
feeling.
World Series.
We haven't experienced that feeling.
So I'm sure that if we were in that same spot, we would have been pulling off our best Ron Washington. And,
Absolutely.
Exactly.
part of the reason that
Exactly.
the Braves have been so effective is because they've been so aggressive on the base paths. And
Yeah.
a lot of people have talked about how base running it's not that important anymore. It's a lie.
Lies.
Lies. Base running's important. With less base hits, you have to be able to capitalize on them. And for the Braves, they do hit a lot of home runs.
They do.
But they've also been getting a lot of singles. And their base coaches, a lot of people you don't recognize the name of the base coaches, but they have very prominent base coaches.
They do.
Ron Washington.
Yep.
I don't know what his professional background was in terms of base stealing, but he's done a great job of being aggressive. They're very aggressive against the Dodgers.
Yeah.
They're very aggressive against the Astros. And
And
part
he's
of that,
been in the World Series before.
Yes.
As a manager a long time ago. So it's like, he knows not only does he bring the experience of, just the coaching experience and understanding how to do that, and as a player, of course, as well. But he's been in this situation before in particular at a heightened role. So if he can handle that to a capacity, this is a walk in the park for him.
yeah, and they've taken advantage of the fact that Yordan Alvarez, especially in these NL ballparks, so Atlanta, isn't a traditional outfielder. He's slow getting to the ball. His throws have been erratic. They've put Kyle Tucker in center field.
Yeah.
He's not a traditional center fielder, so his routes are a bit off. Michael Brantley has been playing right so that Yordan Alvarez can play left. So
We also
they've
have to
been all over
realize,
the place.
though, with his knees as well. He's had procedures on both of his knees, Alvarez. So
Yeah.
that has an effect
Yeah.
And it doesn't really affect him at the plate, which is why he's in the
No,
lineup.
exactly.
because he's an elite level DH.
But Dusty Baker, rightfully so, was putting him in the lineup, but he was willing to sacrifice the defense. And the Braves have fully taken advantage of it.
Yeah.
And then their first base coach, Eric Young Sr., one of the best base stealers in baseball history, also father of Eric Young Jr., in case if anyone needed me to point that one out. So
any diehards. Yeah.
their base coaches have been very important parts. And you talk about it, these teams, it's not just the players, it's also the coaches. The coaches have to put the players in positions to succeed. And I don't want to say the Astros coaches haven't done that, but the Braves coaches absolutely have. They've put guys in the right situations, and that's where you've seen the Braves thrive. And Ozzie Albies has been a great base runner. Eddie Rosario has been a great base runner. Duvall has not, but there have been some very, very good displays of base running from the Braves. Also, shout out to Ozzie Albies. Free tacos for everyone. I should have mentioned that when we were talking about game 1.
I do love free. I love free stuff, especially free food.
Yes, you do,
The
Ryan.
main reason why I'm excited my parents are coming here next weekend is that I get free dinners and free groceries without having to take it out of my savings account.
But
Look at that.
so like, what do we happen to know when this free Doritos Locos Taco Day is?
No,
No.
not to
Well,
my knowledge at least.
I hope that it's not while your parents are here because that's a free meal that could be missed out on.
Yeah, exactly.
It is.
But
Right. Yeah,
I probably just go late at night when they're back at their hotel sleeping.
yeah, sure.
whatever works.
But after this really bad Game 1 loss in which Jorge Soler hit the leadoff home run, Adam Duvall hit a home run. Pretty
Mhm.
sure Darnold also hit a home run. Or no, he hit a home run in Game 2.
Yes.
But the Astros, they responded, and they responded big. They came out firing. Wasn't a great start from Max Fried.
Mhm.
And the Astros, they even up the series. You know, obviously when you host the first 2 games of a 7-game series, your goal is to go up 2-0. That way you just take one on the road. You have a chance to come back home and win
Yeah.
the next 2 games at home to win the World Series. But they did what they had to do because if they would have dropped this game, they'd be done right now. But the offense showed out, and they got a great start from Jose Urquidy, another guy who just kind of has that calming presence on the mound. He went 5 innings, didn't allow a run. He was phenomenal. So Urquidy hit a good start, and you know you're watching, you're like, okay, the Astros they got punched in the mouth in
Mhm.
Game 1, but in Game 2 they responded and they came back. So if you're in my seat, I'm saying, okay, you know the Astros, they're right there, and I predicted the Astros to win the series. I'm like, all right, still feel confident in that. What were your guys' thoughts after Game 2?
I mean, at least in my opinion, I was like, all right, we're set up for a really good series. Anytime the series is evened up, going into that first travel day, in my opinion, that's like the telltale sign that you're gonna have a really fun series ahead of you, and that it's not, not one team is necessarily overmatched. If it's even, it goes to show you both of those teams are there for a reason, for sure. Like no one team is necessarily a slouch. And in this case, it was the Braves who kind of had to come out and prove that. Because, again, looking at, I mean, we talked about this last week, but if we had to peg someone as an underdog coming in, it was Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
And, that was the big question coming in. Okay, 88-win team, the whole same narrative without most of their star contingent, and with a lot of other things going on, like how are they going to keep this up? And they responded with a big win in Game 1, and then it didn't go there. It went pretty much the exact opposite way for them in Game 2. So that's kind of that always sort of sets everything up. You feel like going forward now, has it gone necessarily any better for Houston? No, it has not. In fact, it's probably, it's been the exact opposite for them. But I thought Game 2 was definitely a glimpse into, again, what the Astros need to do every single time if they want to go out and if they want to win this is what they need to do. They need to just continue to, pile on pressure from the very beginning, get ahead on guys like Max Fried, and this now depleted starting rotation of Atlanta if they really want to stay in this thing. And as we speak, they're down by 2 runs right now in the 3rd inning. There's still a lot. It's a bullpen game for Atlanta tonight. It's been a bullpen game the last 2 nights.
Yeah.
And the fact that they've found a way to still win, Houston, it's like, all right, now it's come down to this. You're 1 loss away from it being all over and everything like that. And Game 2 was sort of the thing where it was like, if they do this, then they can still hang in this thing and they can definitely still make a run at it. So that was sort of my reaction to that. I thought after Game 2 it was going to be a much different kind of series, a much more competitive Astros is what we were going to be getting after that Game 2. And not to say they haven't been competitive, the Braves have it's been a masterclass, as it has been this entire postseason.
And we talked, you just mentioned that the bullpen has been worked heavily because of the starting rotation.
Yeah.
And this was a bullpen game that was probably going to be started by Charlie Warner. The Braves are already in their bullpen. Davidson, he pitched 2 innings, allowed 2 runs, and now Jesse Chavez is in with 2 guys on. Ryan, what were your thoughts following Game 2? Because it's an even series. Charlie Warner, he's not going to – at this point, we knew Charlie Warner was done for the series. What were you thinking?
Going into that game, I think what my main thing was is that they needed a very quality start from Max Fried, and they didn't get that.
Mhm.
So that led to a little bit of worry because they were without one of their top pitchers, and I know they were going back home. They got Ian Anderson, who is a postseason master, and I was feeling good for them in Game 3, but for the longevity throughout the course of the rest of the series, not having Morton and then seeing Fried struggle, there were some worries.
Yeah, and now we said we'd be updating you live as this game goes on. The Astros just scored. There's still no outs. It's actually now 4-3. So this game is definitely not over. The series isn't over. And part of the reason that I don't think the Braves pitching staff has been affected yet is because they haven't gotten back around to Charlie Morton's turn in the rotation. That comes tonight. So the bullpen, theoretically, your path is okay. The bullpen. We needed the bullpen game in Game 4.
Yeah,
and that's what they got. But they were hoping to come around here in Game 5 and get Charlie Morton. They haven't. Now they're in the bullpen. These guys have pitched a lot. And so you were hoping, theoretically, that Chavez comes in the 5th or the 6th inning instead he's in the 3rd inning.
Yeah.
So
but I think the other thing, sorry to interrupt, but what we have to look at is Game 3 as well. How Ian Anderson pitched, I think that also helped on the bullpen not being as taxed as well.
100%.
I think that definitely helped.
Yeah, and seeing on the flip side, that's how Atlanta wins, doing exactly what they did in Game 3. That was an excellently called and managed game, I think, by Snitker. There's a lot of debate about taking Ian Anderson out when he had a no-hitter going into the 5th. Guess what? When you're in a situation like this, and third time through the order, and those in-depth numbers come into play, you have to take your chance and understand, hey, we're at the end of the line here. Realistically, is it better if we keep Ian Anderson in for the drama and everything like that? Sure. But we're trying to win here. And so I think that was an excellent indication. You saw in Game 2 everything that the Astros need to do in order to win. You saw in Game 3 everything Atlanta needs to do in order to win. They need to pitch. And they've done that this entire postseason. And they need to continue to do that throughout. And tonight, if they really have a chance, as I speak, it's tied now. It's 4-4 with 2 outs. So again, far from over. It's one of those things where you need to shut it down, like they have the last couple of nights when things get late. Because as taxed as this bullpen is, this is all you got. So managing it to the best of your ability, understanding who's better in certain situations, makes it a lot easier to understand this Braves team, winning this thing.
Right. And so coming off of that Game 2 loss, they go back to Atlanta. The lineup has to change because they put Alvarez in the outfield. They end up putting Tucker in center. And Luis Garcia, he gets a start for Houston. Didn't do bad. But you know who did do bad was the Astros lineup. Ian Anderson threw 5 no-hit innings. He gets pulled, and everyone's there like, oh, come on, you can't do that. Well, you know what? Brian Snitker doesn't care if Ian Anderson gets a no-hitter. Like, obviously, obviously, if he gets a no-hitter, that's
awesome.
That's the best case scenario. But he's not willing to run the risk. Okay, these guys have seen him. It's not a regular season game where we'll let him chase baseball history. Brian Snitker's trying to chase a World Series.
Yeah.
He goes to the bullpen, which has been absolutely phenomenal. And they shut him down for the last 4 innings, and they're able to shut out Houston and win this game 2-0. And then you're sitting there, you're like, okay, Atlanta's up 2-1. The game next day, it's gonna be a bullpen game for Atlanta. You're also thinking, okay, these 4 guys, Ian Anderson, he had a chance to go deep, go at least another inning. What were your guys' thoughts? Did you think he pulled him too early? Because I based on your guys' reactions, you guys agreed with pulling him and not letting him run it. But do you guys think that he could have gone like another inning, knowing what was going to happen to the bullpen in the games?
Given the circumstance, again, and we had sort of the same debate with the whole twin caps thing in Game 5 of that last year's series concerning Blake Snell. Given the situation, his pitch count at the time was sort of far beyond where you kind of want it to be at that point in the game. Hadn't really thrown too many strikes. It wasn't like he was dominating Houston's lineup. A lot of deep counts, a lot of sort of lot of those, sort of tightrope walk kind of innings, if you will. It was a cold night. He was pitching to his advantage there, but there was a lot of factors that went into it. And again, we talk a lot about this whole like third time through the order thing, and I don't quite remember if that was when he was making his trip through the third time through the order. I think it was, but you have to look at those things and understand. Okay, hey, we're not necessarily pulling you because we don't believe you going forward. We're pulling you because for a couple of reasons. A, we have a lot of faith in our bullpen from handling it from here on out, and B, we may need you in a couple more games.
Yeah.
And considering where they're at pitching wise and depth, without Morton, they've had to go with two guys who haven't previously started a game in the postseason yet over the past couple of games. Like, they're gonna probably need him if Houston ends up winning this game, either in Game 6 or in Game 7, if necessary, obviously. So it's those kind of things, and again, that's where this whole managing thing comes into effect. You need to make the right decisions, looking not so much at what's going to help you win the game right now, but you've got 2-3 more ways to get it as well. And if Ian Anderson's the guy, which in my opinion he is at this point, he's probably the most proven starter they have left in the postseason. They're going to need him. They're going to need him from here on out. So I thought at the beginning, again, for the drama, for all that, taking him out is obviously not the right move, but it's the World Series and you're trying to win. So it makes sense, especially when you're turning it over to the Atlanta bullpen, who has been phenomenal this postseason, when you have a vote of confidence there, and it worked out. And, I mean, you see what happens when that works out. And this is, again, exactly what the Braves need to do if they want to win this series.
Cole, you hammered it home. I don't think there's anything else I can add besides the way that they've just been able to make up for the loss of Charlie Morton.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at it, last night in Game 4, they started Dylan Lee, who was released by the Marlins and got his first big league call-up just a month ago.
Yeah.
Then let's look at Kyle Wright, who relieved him. He spent, I think, 9 seasons in the minors, and he had nearly a 10 ERA with the Braves.
Yeah, and the last time he pitched in the postseason was Game 3 of the 2020 NLCS, and he started the game in which the Braves allowed 11 runs in the first inning. So I forget how many of those runs allowed because I was so irritated because I realized that I was at a baseball game that was going to be very non-competitive. But his postseason and just frankly MLB track record hadn't been great. But Kyle Wright, he had the intangibles, and he pitched at Vanderbilt, was a first-round draft pick, very highly touted prospect, but he hadn't put it all together. But he kind of like followed the model of what this Braves team has done. Like, they're putting it together at the right time, which is crazy, but it's what they've done, and they're going to continue to do it. And they have 6 more innings to make up for the fact that they just blew a 4-run lead.
Yeah, exactly.
Here's the thing. I think what we have to mention is how the reason everyone thought the Cardinals could beat the Dodgers in the wild card was because they put it together at the right time and got hot.
Mm-hmm.
When a team can get hot and pieces it all together, and especially with great timing right before the playoffs, watch out. And this is what the Braves have done. They've continued to piece it together. They went out and revamped that entire outfield to make up for the loss of Acuna. They went out and they've added to this team by getting Charlie Morton in free agency before this season. So this team has found ways to win, and they're going to continue to find ways to win. And then tonight, they started a 19th round JUCO product who made his first career postseason appearance. So what this team has been able to do and yet still win just shows how no matter what they've gone through, this team might be, if you can call it, in the end, might be a team of destiny.
Yeah, I mean, I think if they do pull this off, which they still have to,
yes, exactly.
I think Team of Destiny would definitely be the best way to describe them.
Yeah.
Moving to yesterday's game or Saturday's game, you're looking at Atlanta. They're now up 2-1, and they now have a bullpen game. So wild things going on here. For Houston, they started Zach Greinke, a lot of postseason experience. Still a good pitcher, but hadn't necessarily looked great as of late. He goes 4 scoreless in this game. The Astros, they get out on top early 2-0. In the first inning, they scored in the 4th inning. Altuve home run, hit a home run, and you're sitting there, you're like, okay, the bullpen, they're going to hand the ball off to their good bullpen arms, and we'll see where they go from there. As soon as they get into the bullpen, Brooks Raley, he allows a run. Phil Maton gets them out of it. But then the Braves, man, they just
Came
found
right
their
back.
magic against Christian Javier. There's another guy that we talked about on our previous show, talking about how he's going to be a guy that when your starters don't have it, you're going to need innings out of guys that can go a long distance. And the Houston Astros starters, they haven't been great this series. It's certainly not the reason why they're trailing, but without Javier, given what had happened to the starting pitching, was going to have to be a bigger part. And in this inning, in the seventh inning, he allows back-to-back home runs, Dansby Swanson and Jorge Soler off the bench. Neither of the two home runs were crushed by any means, 359 feet and 372 feet. But as far as I'm concerned, if the ball goes off the bat, it's between the poles and it lands over the fence.
Over the wall. It's the same regardless.
Yeah, all runners score. So that's what happened, and they were able to shut it down for the remainder of the game because once again, Tyler Matzek, Luke Jackson, Will Smith, they're the 7, 8, 9 guys, and they have been so money because they just go out and attack you and say, all right, we know we have good fastballs, off-speed pitches. You have to go out and hit them. We're not gonna get behind the count. And the Astros offense, after having a good start to this game, just fell apart once again because the Braves pitching staff just went right after them.
Right. 100%. And
I think it's one of those things where, and again, last night was a really good example. Bullpen game, when the bullpen was, still, I'd consider it taxed at this point. They still found a way to string it together and win. Kyle Wright was great. He did his job. And then as long as you sort of keep it where it is, if you have a competent offense, you'll figure out a way to get back in it. And, kind of coming from a couple of guys who, have had their fair share of, handling adversity this series, is there's I don't want to say I almost said the whole Castellanos thing as a joke, but Freeman just hit a home run to right, so it's now 5-4 Braves.
Man,
This is going to be that one was crushed. This is going to be a pretty crazy game to the end. Regardless, last night was sort of fun to watch the Braves just sort of, again, string things together when everything's sort of depleted. The odds don't really seem to be in their favor with the guy who's making his major league debut on the biggest stage, or his first major league start on the biggest stage in baseball, and they still found a way to win. And Eddie Rosario had that great catch at the wall as well. It's those little things that sort of seal the deal for you. And yeah, they're just figuring it out at the right time. Ryan sort of mentioned it. It's about getting hot at the right time. This team had 88 wins. They bagged the 106-win Dodgers team. They bagged the Brewers. Those teams had better sustained success over the course of the season, and now they're doing the same thing against Astros team who had sustained success over the season, but they've sort of proved that point where if as long as you sort of put it together and you're utilizing your team in the right way, like Brian Snitker has, it comes down to the manager, man. And how you're making those changes, how you're making the calls, how you're calling the shots, and they've just done such a good job, and that's why they're at this point, and that's obvious. But they've competed, and frankly, it's been shocking that they've, at least in my eyes, that they've played as well as they have. I didn't expect them to necessarily be a pushover, but they're clearly just outmatching Houston right now, who coming in I thought was just a much better team.
Right.
Well, I want to talk about the series real quick. What we saw in the first two games was just dominance from each team, with the Braves taking care of action in game one, and then the Astros in game two. Game three, we finally get that really close game that I had wanted, because those games, I love when you have a 1-0, 2-1 game. And then we also had something like that again last night. So the one thing that we've been missing has been kind of a slugfest, and I think this is what we're getting ready for tonight.
Yeah.
And that means we've seen it all in this series, and that's what I really want to see, is close games, maybe some dominance from each side, and then just a slugfest. And that looks like what we're about to have, and I'm excited for it. So
yeah, this one's going to be an exciting end, I will say that.
Yeah, this series is kind of giving us everything that all baseball fans want to see. Maybe not in terms of what Astros fans want to see, but at the same time, I really think that this series has turned from one that we've been curious of, is it just going to be dominance the entire time, into a great series with 2 close games in Atlanta and a potential close slugfest for Game 5 that could have our World Series champion for the 2021 season.
Yeah, and that's not that any of these games have been bad. The 2 games in Houston, they weren't really close games, but these 2 games in Atlanta so far that have finished were really close games. The Astros had their opportunities. They didn't capitalize on them, especially Game 4. Game 4, these teams, they had runners in scoring position throughout the game. So, you're kind of sitting there, you're like, all right, base hit scores here. It's not just like, all right, well, the only way they can score right here is a home run. Not that we care because we're into these games anyways, but
Right.
Game 4 was one of the most incredible 3-2 games that
Yeah.
I think baseball fans have experienced in a long time, just because of all the situations in which there were runners on base and you're sitting there saying, all right, they can score here. But they didn't, because the Atlanta Braves pitching staff has just been so phenomenal,
Yeah.
especially with runners in scoring position against
Mhm.
a really good Houston Astros lineup that they have absolutely quieted. All right, we're going to go to a quick break. When we come back, we'll obviously continue to update everyone with what is happening throughout the game, but we're going to talk about some managerial hires that have happened across Major League Baseball, because, as much as we want to just talk about the World Series, there's some other stuff that we have to talk about. So we'll be right back on the Golden Sombrero Show.
If you're itching for one final weekend party, the College Basketball Bonanza is the place to be. Join myself,
Yeah,
Nicholas
that
O'Dell,
happened like
Dominic
right
Stewart
as I
every
was like
Sunday night at 7 o'clock for
like the
in-depth
Freeman home run
discussion of
happened like
world
right as I
college
was
basketball.
as
We
I
got
was
the
talking.
best
I
hours
felt
and
like
your favorite bit makers
Trust you.
for
I
all
was in that
covered
situation, and I almost said like, "Oh, there's a drag for rice," and
That would have been awesome.
I was like, "Oh God," kind of funny.
Don't miss out on the weekends. Find
The Golden Sombrero Show on BlazeRadioOnline.com from the Bill Austin Radio Studio, and if you're also watching us on YouTube, thank you. Dominic Stern, joined by Cole Bradley and Ryan Blank. Guys, we had some managerial hires. We talked about it 2 shows ago when the Cardinals, they fired Mike Schilt, and it was a pretty shocking firing. But we talked about why it might have happened. They were very quick to announce that they had found their replacement for him. It's going to be Oliver Ollie Marmol. He was their bench coach when under Mike Schilt, and very young. He's going to be the youngest head coach in Major League Baseball. Cole, you were pretty adamant about why this happened. I wanted to know what your thoughts were on this hiring.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and we talked a little bit about the whole, the quote unquote differences in philosophy. I think that it came down to with Schilt and the Cardinals front office. And that's, I feel like, what sort of leads to this move. I guess we'll start by saying the Cardinals really strike me. I feel like the Cardinals really are an organization that is built sort of almost like a familial aspect. They sort of take care of their guys, whether it's players, the front office. It's a very friendly and like sort of, camaraderie based environment. And so it makes sense that they not only name their new manager right away, but that they promote through the organization.
Mm-hmm.
And a guy who's not only been with the organization for a while, but that's pretty acclaimed by, Schilt. And I mean, I heard some sound bites from players saying he's kind of he's always been the manager type. I use that in sort of quotations there because from my understanding is it sounds like he's very familiar with the guys. Mike Schilt, I think in the past has actually said, you know, Oli Marmol is a guy who's going to manage a baseball team one day. I think he's actually gone on record and said that, and here we are. He's taken his old job. Yeah,
how the turntables have turned.
Yeah, exactly.
Turntables.
I think it's just kind of.
I'm still very shocked by the move in general. I think it's just kind of interesting how it's sort of played out, personally. But again, it makes sense that they're promoting through the organization and as quickly as they have. I think it's a solid hire for him, just solely based on the fact that they're going with a guy that they know has been with the organization, that sort of bleeds Cardinals baseball, and is going to, definitely embrace the quote unquote, again, philosophy that this team sort of wants moving forward.
Yeah. Ryan, what are your thoughts?
We saw this happen when they fired Matheny. They went with Schilt, who was in the organization, and it didn't shock me that they went that route again. I think it's just because they do a great job of establishing managerial types. And Cole, I think you talked about it very well by even adding that Schilt did say himself that Marmol is a manager type and that he will be the manager of a team soon. So I think he's deserving of it. He's going to be, I believe, the youngest manager in the game, only 35 years old. So it's going to be an interesting one, knowing how they do have some veterans with Goldschmidt, with Arenado, but they also do have some young bucks with Bader, O'Neill, and those type of guys as well. So I think it might work out. But I did expect them to look inside their organization because, especially after firing Schilt, they thought they had some great candidates within.
Yeah, and I think they knew when they fired him that they were going to go to Marmol. And yeah, Cole, you mentioned it. They were going to go in-house here. The Cardinals are often regarded as one of the most well-run teams in baseball. I'd go on the record and say it's them, the Dodgers, the Braves, the Brewers, the Rays. It's those teams that are consistently around, and there's a reason they're around. It's because they have good coaching staffs, and they have guys that they know they can trust in various different roles. And, when you have a guy like Marmol, who organization like the Cardinals is so confident in, and they showed that by firing their head coach, who had done a really good job, and promoting him very quickly to this head coaching position, I'm sure they were probably very worried about him leaving the organization to go to interview for the Padres, interview for the Mets, as those have been the only other holes.
Yeah.
Although there is another opening that we'll talk about in a little bit. But so I'm sure that was probably something that snuck in the back of their mind, and they said, hey, we want Marmol to not only be a part of our organization, but we also want him to be our head coach. And you know what? As much as Schilt has done for this organization, and he's doing a great job as our head coach, we want Marmol to be the guy going forward. Yeah. And maybe they didn't want it immediately, but maybe they felt that not even this time around, but also next time around, if they didn't hire Marmol or promote him, he was going to be gone and he was going to be a head coach somewhere else. So I think that is also a part of it. But I don't think that this is going to change anything about the Cardinals. They're going to be the best team in baseball consistently because they're so well run. But also by doing this, you no longer have Marmol as your bench coach. They're still yet to announce those guys. But I'm sure that they'll also promote from within the organization. Marmol, I'm sure, is very well connected within the Cardinals and to the other coaches, and I'm sure he'll pick and choose those guys. And I'm sure that they'll figure out a way to roll here because they're the Cardinals, and basically everything they touch turns into gold. Yeah. And they're still waiting. They're still waiting on Matthew Liberatore to turn into gold because they traded Randy Arozarena for him, and when that trade happened, everyone's like, "Oh, the Cardinals, they fleeced the Rays," and then now it's the Rays. They fleeced the Cardinals, and so
it's amazing how that narrative can turn so quick.
Well, and it's almost like you shouldn't base that narrative off the past 200 baseball games because these guys, baseball it's a longevity sport. What if Randy Arozarena sucks and Matthew going forward? He's not going to, but what if? What if? My favorite phrase in sports. Yeah. So I think that this is a good hire by the Cardinals. I have no reason to believe otherwise from what the Cardinals have done that this isn't a good hire. So the Cardinals are going to be right at the top, Central next year, whether or not it's them or the Brewers at the top, but they're going to be right there with them. And the Cardinals, they're probably going to be playing in October next year because,
That's normally how
Yeah.
it works.
the months of the year go.
Simple as that.
The months of the year go January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, Cardinals.
Yeah.
So, they play in October. That's what they do. Haven't had a losing season since 2007 for a reason. So, I have no doubt that Marmol is probably going to keep that streak going.
Absolutely.
All right. The fun one.
Mhm.
The Padres. Yes, my San Diego Padres.
So, Dom,
Yes, Ryan.
I got to ask you.
Okay.
After you say who the manager is,
Mhm.
what was your first reaction? That's what I got to know.
Well, so yes, I will go through my thing and then I'll let you guys talk about it. We talked about it a little bit before the show, but the Padres, they had interviewed a couple of candidates that I was like, okay, those are candidates that I like. They interviewed Ron. They didn't interview Ron Washington. They interviewed Mike Scioscia. I was like, gross. Brad Osmus. Where I'm like, okay, that's even grosser. They interviewed Ozzie Guillen, where I'm like, wow, that's really gross. And they're experienced managers, which the Padres hadn't hired an experienced manager since 1988, when Jack McKeon, the Padres general manager, hired himself to be the manager. So it's been a very long time in San Diego. There's been some good managers, Bruce Bochy and Bud Black, but it's been a long time. So they're interviewing these experienced managers. And I'm like, okay, that's a good sign. I want them to interview some first-time managers because that's what you have to do. But
Yeah.
I hadn't seen any of those guys. And then all of a sudden, it's Friday, or no, is it Thursday at this point? Either way, I'm sitting in my apartment with my mom, or I'm walking in the hallway with my mom.
It's Thursday that they hired.
Yeah, it's Thursday. And I see a tweet from AJ Cassavell, the Padres MLB.com beat reporter. And it says, Padres have agreed to a 3-year deal with Bob Melvin to become the next manager.
Mhm.
And this wasn't reported. So, Ryan, my first reaction was that I was shocked.
Yeah.
It wasn't reported. It became pretty clear in 2019 that Jace Tingler was a very strong candidate for the job. Like, he'd been interviewed multiple times. We also heard that Ron Washington had multiple interviews. So it was clear that it was between those two guys. There was nothing reported on Bob Melvin. And I think that was because that's what AJ Preller wanted. So my first reaction was, wait, is this real? And I wouldn't assume that AJ Cassavell would do that because he's a professional journalist and he very rarely tweets anything based off sources. But he did this, and I was shocked. Then, after about 20 seconds of, okay, maybe this is real, I was like, holy crap, this is one of the best managers in baseball. This is the longest tenured manager in baseball for a reason. And what Bob Melvin's done in Oakland is just win. And he's gone through a couple of rebuilds there because Oakland refuses to spend money. And when you refuse to spend money, you have to go through rebuilds because you're not paying free agents that are going to help produce a ton for you. And he would still win. He would still exceed expectations. This year was a rough year for Oakland, but I was shocked. And another good part of this is that the A's aren't requiring any compensation because the Padres requested to the A's that he gets interviewed, and they said, yeah, you can interview him. So nothing has to go back to the A's. So I'm stoked because from everything that I've read, Bob Melvin, the players love playing for him. He's very well respected by his players. So I'm hoping that can continue in San Diego. But I was stoked by this hire.
Yeah, I completely agree, and especially when you're hiring a guy who is proven. He's not a first-time guy. He's been here before, and he's had success at that. Among active managers, I've got the graphic pulled up here. He is only behind, and he's behind Tony La Russa, Dusty Baker, Terry Francona, and Joe Madden in terms of all-time wins, and that's exclusive company, obviously. But he's been around the game forever, and he's been a manager forever. And the thing I really like about it is that he's coming from Oakland, known smaller market team, a team that always is competitive, but doesn't have the star power on the same level. That San Diego or those kinds of teams have. It's one of those sort of, you know, lower budget teams that he just kind of works with. You know, whatever's given to him, whatever it is that, you know, he has to work with to put on the field, he understands, you know, coming from Oakland, all right, I got to make do with what I have. He doesn't so much have to do that anymore with a team like San Diego that I would not be shocked to see them go out and be aggressive again this offseason to try and cement themselves as World Series contenders once again. Adding him, a guy who has experience, a guy who has sort of, you know, some veteran leadership, you know, at the top step of the dugout, it's just as good as going and getting a big frontline starter in a trade that sets your team over the top. He's kind of that, you know, that star that you need in terms of, you know, your coaching staff and for your and just in terms of, you know, success moving forward. I think it's great. It's hard to, you know, really point at some negatives, to be completely honest. And, you know, he's coming off yet another really solid year with Oakland. They just missed out on the playoffs. I don't think anyone really expected them to be super over the top, as they never really are to begin with. But he competes. He hangs in it till the end, and he knows how to manage a group of guys who is, you know, not necessarily, you know, the best product to put out on the field, but he makes do with what he has, let alone doing it with a group of guys coming over to San Diego. He doesn't really have as much of a problem there. And it's going to help for the younger guys too, because he has sort of that, you know, he again, he's been there before. He's acting like a time. He can sort of hinder and develop and help further the careers of these younger guys that San Diego has, to help them take the next steps in becoming perennial superstars, or putting them even more in that case, or, you know, echelon or whatever. So I like the hire. It's hard not to like it. I mean, again, it's hard to really point at a whole lot of negatives here, to be completely honest. I'm just shocked that, you know, that this hire was made, because obviously there was the whole thing about the A's bringing him back for a few more seasons, and then this happened. So it's gonna, I think, be a little weird to see him in anything but an A's uniform at first, just because he's been there so long. But I think this is a really good move for the Padres. I think it's a good move for him, and I think he's now in a situation where, you know, he's got a shot at winning the whole thing. And because he's now been put in place within a group that really could use him, he could really use them as well, because now it's a group of guys that is a World Series contending team. And I don't think he's ever been able to say that in Oakland, to be quite frank.
Brian?
Well, looking at this hire, I think it's very simple. This is a home run hire. And looking at it, Bob Melvin by himself has more playoff appearances than the Padres.
Yeah.
I told you this last night.
Did. I was, and then I thought, I'm like, you know, it's probably
Hold on.
right.
Actually, let me make sure I have that right in my head. I think it might be.
Well, the Padres have 6.
No, it's not that. I think he might have had 7 appearances with the A's by himself.
Oh, with the A's. Oh, that makes me feel worse. Thanks. Because, I mean, the Padres were 84, 94, 98, 05, 06.
Let's check this real quick. And Dom, if that's true,
2020.
that just shows how great of a how great of a manager you're getting. So, but before I get the stats and make sure that's right, what I want to say is that this is the exact job that Bob Melvin should get, because we all said it. You both said it, that the A's don't spend money. They're a small market team. You were waiting for them.
Wait, Ryan, hold on. Zach Greinke.
I was about to interrupt him myself as well.
Just got a pinch hit. Zach Greinke.
Oh boy.
Whoa! What?
Zach
Single
Greinke.
to right.
Zach Greinke pinch hit as a pitcher and got a hit in a World Series game.
You know, let me say this.
He's 2 for 2, or he has 2 hits this World Series.
He's really making his. He's really making his final case on the biggest stage to keep the pitcher hitting in the NL, even though he's an AL guy in the new CBA agreement.
Wow, I cannot believe that he just came in and did that. That's actually crazy. Hold on. Seriously?
Yeah,
Gosh,
it just happened. He's
I
on
love
third.
Zach Greinke. And I'm not biased because he's a Royal or anything. He was a Royal, but
He's also a Diamondback.
He was,
So,
yeah.
just saying.
He was not a Padre.
He was a Dodger.
He's a free agent this offseason, though, so he could be a Padre.
Okay,
Yeah.
Dom, I have the stats in for you. I don't know if how you're going to feel about it.
Okay.
He managed them, the A's, from 2011 to 2021, correct?
That sounds
Yes.
about right. He was last with, I think he was Arizona.
All right. He tied the Padres
Okay, he tied.
with 6. But in his career, he has more. I think this is, like I was saying, the job he deserves because looking at it, he's been with a small market team that won't spend money, that won't go out and make big trades. And this move of letting him leave the A's makes me beg the question of why did they trade for Starling Marte? Why? And give up a young arm? That's where I get confused.
Well, because
Because they
Marte's
were
going to
in
be
a
a
position to compete as well, and
Yeah.
they wanted to add a guy in a position of need.
yeah. He's going to be a free agent. I think the A's looked at it and said, all right, well, we have a lot of guys who are going to be entering their second or their third year of arbitration, which means that they're going to be getting a steep pay raise. And as the Oakland A's, we do not want to pay these guys, so we're going to have a sell-off, which we'll talk about.
Okay,
Well, we might as well talk about it right now.
That's
because
fair,
I think we've established this is a good hire by the Padres,
Oh, there's
which
one
is
last thing I have
all
to
that I
say.
wanted to really establish. here.
Yeah.
Just one last thing.
Okay.
Imagine what Bob Melvin can do with a star-studded team
Exactly.
and with a general manager that will spend money and make moves to make the team better.
Yep.
Just imagine this is a match made in heaven, and the Padres, you know what, Tom, they disappointed you this year, but hey, they made you happy because their biggest weakness, manager, has just gotten a huge upgrade.
Well, I don't know if that's the biggest weakness. Bob Melvin did make the playoffs 7 times. 07 with the Diamondbacks,
Oh no.
12, 13, 14 with the A's, and then
Oh, no.
18, 19, 20 with the A's.
Oh
again.
no, Dom.
So he's been in the playoffs more than the Padres have. Now, a couple of those times were lost in the wild card game, and the only series that they've won was the wild card, like Mickey Mouse series that the Padres also won. So
Yeah, hold on. Yeah,
it is.
the Padres made a Mickey Mouse playoff appearance.
Yeah, I'm aware, Ryan. We've established that. The Dodgers also won a Mickey Mouse playoff series.
Oh
So,
boy.
anyways, we don't need to talk about that. But
Do you know who didn't win a Mickey Mouse series or World Series? The Royals.
thanks, Ryan. The Diamondbacks also didn't win a Mickey Mouse World Series in 2001.
Yeah.
While we're on that
Very
topic,
clear.
but
Hey, Cole, good looks on actually winning a real World Series.
It's a good luck or good looks?
Good looks.
Yeah, it's good looks when you're alive and competent for it, especially as well.
right. So, anyways, that took a really weird turn. But when you look at it, the A's, obviously you could say, well, why would the A's let him go? Well, the A's don't want to pay him. But back to the Starling Marte, a lot of those guys are going to be receiving arbitration pay raises. So
Okay.
the A's, they wanted to do a sell-off, and they're going to be trading some players. They're going to unfortunately be starting a rebuild, or at least that's what it seems like they're going to be doing. And that is why they're like, all right, let's save money on our manager. Bob, as much as he's done for this organization, we can go hire someone, a first-time manager, hopefully have him turn into the next Bob Melvin, and then they can save some money in the process. And if that's not the guy in 3 years, you can fire him, and then you can do the process all over again. So,
and now thinking a little bit more about it, it makes the A's, there was a whole thing earlier this year with how they were going to be forced out of Oakland. They were going to have to relocate and move somewhere else. That's not going to be the case anymore. But it seems like they're at this point where, okay, they're recognizing they're at an interesting spot. They didn't make the playoffs this year. They competed, and they can still compete moving forward. But maybe it's time for a little bit of a makeover for the organization as a whole. Let's find a new face of the ball club. Let's, sort of let Bob Melvin sort of, go, let's go our separate ways in terms of that. And let's sort of start a rebuild, not because it's necessarily needed, but because it just kind of makes sense given the times right now, I think Oakland just kind of wants to sort of go through a regrouping stage, and it makes sense to kind of, all right, let's just move away from Bob. Not that there was anything wrong with him, but let's get a fresh face in here and let's try and experiment with something new. And that happens a lot in baseball, I think. And so it kind of makes sense why we're at this point a little bit more now that I'm thinking about it, where Bob Melvin is A, gone, and B, he's a manager with a different and quite frankly much more competitive ball club now moving forward.
Ryan?
Yeah, well, we've been expecting this to happen for a couple of years. It was just a matter of when they actually decided to do it. And I think they're using this opportunity of letting Melvin go to a team that's more competitive as their chance to sell off and rebuild. And I think that it's going to be tough for the A's, especially for A's fans, because they're not going to have their dynamic and dominant corner duo of the Mats anymore, probably soon. So
Yeah,
it's going to suck because you've become accustomed to those guys. And that really, when you look at it, the A's had so much potential with all the young talent led by Luzardo. And then you also had Ramon Laureano. You had the Mats. You had so many guys that you could develop where you could have become a World Series contender, and they just didn't do it. So there's a lot of what ifs that happened with the A's. But in the end, letting Melvin go to a team that's going to be more competitive and where he can get that ring that he deserves, it's their opportunity to do so.
Yeah, the offseason for Oakland's going to be interesting. We'll see where they go to hire for a manager. I wrote a very good article about Will Venable in case they're interested. So
I did read that article. It was very good.
I thought I laid out a pretty good case. He would have
You
been.
did.
a lot of
You
people
laid out a
didn't-
very good case
A
for
lot
it.
of people didn't agree with you.
No, they did not.
Yeah,
No.
some people went at you.
Yeah, there is quite a disagreement.
So that's going to wrap up this episode of the Golden Sombrero Show. We're going to take one last update. Middle of 4, so the Astros, they just didn't score. The Braves did still lead 5-4. But thank you all for tuning into the Golden Sombrero Show on BlazeRadioOnline.com. Dominic Stern on behalf of Cole Bradley and Ryan Blank. Thank you for tuning in. Tune into our show next Sunday to hear us, wrap up the World Series, whether it ends tonight or later in the week. And the college basketball bonanza will start in a couple of minutes.
Baseball over soon.